So yesterday I was busy since you're digging out the facility with us and everything.
Yeah.
You see here, so we got Ozzy.
Yeah, this is
I have
Ozzy.
one little pit and lab mix.
Uh-huh.
And Olga's your other dog.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell me what you're dealing with here.
So, it actually kind of started like just around like Christmas. We had a friend's dog over. That's normally pretty like good around other dogs, no behavioral issues. But we introduced him outside and we brought him inside, and then he was just kind of, I don't know if like it was like a I'll show you or something, or I feel like he was kind of going out of his way to like snap at her and snarl at her and stuff.
Okay.
Which is something I just like hadn't seen before. And I'm not really sure like how to respond in those situations, what's the best thing to do, and like how to prevent that in the future.
Okay.
Other than like, you know, basic obedience, of course, is like important, but it was just like not cool, because normally we take him to the dog park and there's like no issues.
Mm-hmm.
That he's like maybe a little bit like scared and then runs back to us.
Okay.
But we did like the most recent time at the dog park, it was only like him and then our other dog and then one other dog, new one, came in, and he literally just like went up to it and started like snarling and biting at it.
You said coming into the home?
That was the dog park.
At the dog, okay. So
Yeah,
the
and the dog entered, and it was only those two, and then he just like started like, basically like, I don't know if it was like I'm boss or something, or trying to show the other dog what's what.
Okay.
But anyways, not cool. I just don't want him to like eventually bite another dog, and like, I just don't want to have these issues, I guess.
Sure.
Starting early.
Anything else?
That's like the behavior element of it. And then just, I think like healing's always been like an issue for me, like training my other dog even, and I feel like maybe it's just like an issue with like timing and stuff, walking on the leash, that I'm just not rewarding in like the right moment, or doing, positioning something's off, that I'm like not good at training.
Okay.
That issue.
Okay.
Barking, like at like new noises outside the window,
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
Any other obedience stuff? I mean, we have the heel, I'm assuming recall.
Recall, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, for sure. That'd be awesome, especially in a city, you know, it's like dangerous if they were by chance to get off leash, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the dog trap. That's what I have for my other dog.
Okay.
So she's like trained with like e-collar, just for like recall purposes only.
Did you train her yourself or with the trainer?
I had like another friend who's like, she does like basic obedience training, but she's like recommended that I see like a behavioral specialist for like some of his issues.
Okay.
So she was someone that I talked to about just like finding videos on like YouTube and like kind of figuring out the right that I wanted to train her with e-collar. So I use mostly like specific YouTube videos that I liked. And
Sure, yeah, there's a lot of information out nowadays. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it for now.
So make sure I remember this correctly. So if you said Ozzy and Olga, there was an incident around a resource, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, and I feel like you have to like, I think it's probably natural for dogs, you know, but like, he can just be like really snippy towards her and like snarling and biting and stuff like that if there's like food present, like a high value treat of some kind.
Is it like, if you give him like, let's say for instance, a bone, and like she kind of just walks by, will he just like run up to her and say, hey, back away?
Yeah.
That would, okay. Have you seen her actively go in his personal space while he has an out there?
I feel like she's a little bit more like timid, so she kind of lets him like rule the show.
Okay.
So but I feel like if he had like a bone, then she'd probably try to get it. Like she'd be pretty desperate to get the bone as well.
Okay.
So,
and then we would see something.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other incident was you're at a dog park. It was just Ozzy and your other dog, or another? Okay, so you had your two dogs, no one else.
Yeah.
And then someone entered, and that's when you saw him getting defensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, anything else I should know about Ozzy here?
Ozzy began around like 10 weeks, so I feel like maybe the only instances where he was like really exposed to a dog that was like really territorial possessive was maybe like twice with like friends' dogs, and it was like short-lived where I'm like just scooped him up took him on
Sure,
the
sure.
situation.
He was small.
So I'm like, where the heck is this coming from? I don't know if it's just like drive, natural drive from like the breed or whatever.
Sure.
But so I'm like, he's never had a bad experience in his life. We try to do like positive reinforcement for like everything that we can. So
Sure.
no fight, no issues with humans. Freaking loves humans. So
And are you doing the food here just to kind of keep him still at your feet?
yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. Mind if I put him on my sled first?
Sure.
You're an excited little puppy. So I'm gonna just take over, okay?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so it's a lot of good information. In regards to the behavioral stuff, it's normal. So dogs are primal animals. They're driven by survival instinct. And I think because people are so used to, dogs are very easy to obtain, essentially. You can go to a rescue or a humane society, you can find backyard breeders or whatever, or just find dogs on the street. That it's kind of created such a comfort that people don't see dogs as animals anymore. They see them as kind of like
They're babies.
yeah, and teddy bears that are just full of love.
Yeah.
And resource guarding can appear as young as when they're puppies, like 8 weeks old when you get them. It can occur younger than that. It's a survival instinct, okay? Because a lot of people, we don't know where the dog learned to behave from. It's just genetics. It's the personality type. So it's like some people are more possessive of their things. Then other people might be like, yeah, it's cool, you can borrow that. They don't care, right? They don't really care about it as much. So dogs are kind of the same. The more I've worked with dogs over the years, the more I've learned we're not that different. There's dogs that are more likely to escalate to aggression, and there's people that are more likely to escalate to aggression, right? And there's dogs that are completely conflict avoidant, and there's people who are completely conflict avoidant as well. Like I said earlier, some people are more possessive of other things. Other people are like, nah, I don't care so much. Same for dogs. What really differentiates us is we see past, present, future. Dogs only exist in the present. We also have imagination, so we can imagine things and create things, and dogs do not. He doesn't sit there thinking about like a toy that he wish he had, they saw at the store. Also, we have language, very complex language, right? And I can convey to you anything from physics to dog training to like what I did yesterday. Dogs don't have that either. So when we look at it that way, we start to see dog for dog, it makes things a lot simpler, okay? So the resource guarding thing, a couple ways about it is we can't teach him to like sharing. Sharing is like a human concept that we can teach. Are dogs capable of sharing? Sure. I have a dog that was super ball aggressive, and with me, she played ball with my dogs, and she was no problem. And I had to cart her a few times when she went after my dogs. And she learned, okay, when I'm with Jesse's dogs, I share this object, and I don't go after them. But it's not something that I would like tell the owner, like, yeah, your dog is capable of this, because then I'm putting the owner in a bad situation, right? Because they're going to take the dog thinking, oh, Jesse fixed the ball aggression. We can take our dog to play ball with anybody, and then it doesn't really work that way. So then they try to do it, and then they call me up and like, Jesse, our dog attacked another dog with a ball, right? Because they're not a trainer. So when it comes to the resource guarding, we can teach him to avoid conflict as opposed to going into conflict. So for instance, let's say he has a bone. Olga has a bone. And Olga comes into it. I would anticipate he's going to defend it, right? This is my object. So instead of him going into conflict, we would teach him to actually leave the situation. And Olga, essentially he's defaulting to surrendering his object to Olga. Does that make sense? In order to prevent confrontation. That's the easiest way. So like I have a client right now whose dog who is toy aggressive, And if they take the dog to the dog park, if there's any toy on the ground, there's going to be a fight. So what we did was, I was like, I can't make your dog like other dogs playing with the objects and share it with them. But what we can teach your dog is when you go to the dog park, all those objects are off limits. So now the dog has nothing to possess. So if they can't possess it, there's nothing to guard. Does that make sense? So, but then he asked, well, can my dog play fetch with me at the park? I said, absolutely, because now it's just you and your dog. But when it's you and your dog and 10 other dogs and 10 balls on the ground, that's a very complicated situation. Easiest thing to teach is these balls are not yours in this context, right? When we're at the dog park with 10 dogs around and balls all over the place, they're off limits. Does that make sense? So the resource guarding is simple in that sense. It's complicated in the sense of, well, what if you're not there to catch it? And you're in the home, let's say he's on his own time, and he finds a sock, and he's like, this is my sock. And then you guys aren't aware, and then Olga's like passing by, and she's like, oh, what do you got? And he's like, oh, I got a sock, right? And then we're going into conflict. So it's partially, we teach him things are off limits. We control things so that we're aware of, like, okay, we gave Ozzy this, so now that we know this, we know that we would, keep an eye out just in case, because dogs are dogs. But it's not like, oh, once we teach them, so ideally we avoid conflict, but there's always the what if, right? Because nothing's perfect. And I think, again, people think once they've trained their dog, they're thinking their dog's gonna be good. But it takes reinforcement. It's like being a parent, right? Once you have a kid, like you're a parent 24/7, 365 until the day you pass, right? So like my mom, like I'm the oldest of 4 kids. So like with my mom, like she told my brothers, like, you don't ride on the wall, blah, 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 right? But guess what happened a couple of times? They were on the walls, right? When she was busy, she was making lunch, she was making dinner. And all of a sudden she like just lost track of time. And she's like, oh, where are the kids? Lo and behold, they're in the hallway drawing crayons, right? So it's kind of the same thing for dogs. We teach these concepts. It's on us to make sure that we keep reinforcing them. At the same time, there's always margin for error, okay? The obedience stuff is the easiest stuff because you're just teaching skills. The dog park scenario makes sense because since it was just you guys, he just went into like a more territorial state. So when they entered and it was just you guys, and like it happens, even like let's say it was your 2 dogs and like 5 other dogs, and another dog enters. It happens where like, this dog could still become defensive and go like, hey, who are you entering the space? Because the gate, so gates, obviously they're there for safety, but for gates they create territories for dogs. There's a video that I think it's really popular right now with they look like kind of Malinois dogs, and there's a fence between them, and the fence is closed, and you see them like attacking each other through the fence, and then the guy opens the fence, and then they stop, and then he closes the fence, and they start attacking each other again, and he opens it, and they stop.
Sounds like something you would do.
Right? Because the fence creates frustration, it creates separation.
All ramped up.
It creates, I'm here, you're there, right? So that's dogs. So when someone enters the space, if we have a dog that's more likely to be territorial or possessive, it makes sense that would happen, right? Now that can be corrected though, because if he's on an e-collar, right, and I'm at the dog park, and I know he has a habit of starting confrontation with dogs entering, well, when he's going, I can correct them. I can stop the behavior. And will he learn not to do that? Yes, he can learn. When someone enters, instead of running to it to say, who's here, who are you, he learns to move away from it. So that they can come in, and then once the dog is in and in the community space, I don't anticipate we would see anything. Because that's the problem, is the entry. Once the dog's in the space, there shouldn't be any issues. So this is why a lot of people have issues with their dogs and people coming into the home, because it's a door, and there's a knock, it triggers territorial behavior. Person opens the door and they're pulling their dog back, they're like revving their dog up. Then the guest comes in, when they close the door and they let the dog go, that's a lot of times when the bite happens, because they've amped them up, the threat came in, and then when they let the dog go, the dog's like, I need to address this, okay? So that's when we do like the door stuff. We don't do leash, at least in our hands, but we back the dog off the door to shut down the territorial state. Okay, so all this stuff is super common. I see it all the time. It's not so much him being bad, if you will.
That's good. So like, oh no.
Because that's human concept. He's being a dog.
Yeah.
Okay, so like if you you have a car.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say your car's parked.
Is it working? I don't know.
Let's say you have a car. It's a nice car. It works, right? And you look outside your window and you see someone you don't know sitting on your car, just hanging out sitting on your car.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Excuse me.
Yeah, well, you sit on my car, right? Go sit on your own car. But then you see him sitting on another car, and you don't know who that car belongs to. Do you care?
Yeah, no.
No, because it's not your car.
Yeah.
Same thing with the dog. Okay, so he's not doing anything bad. Bad and good is a human concept. He does what you allow and what you don't allow. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't want him to do something, I would correct it, and I teach him you don't do that. Resource guarding, of course, is a little bit different because, you know, it's in the context of him in possession of an object, which makes it easier, right? Because it's like, I know my dog's a resource guarder. So if I give him this, I know I'm gonna have to be prepared or whatever, right? And I don't mean prepared like, oh, like, you know, put one dog over here or stuff like that. Like, I have his collar on, he's got the bone, and I'm just aware, right? So then if he's got his bone over here, and then Olga's got a bone over there, and all of a sudden I see Olga walking over here, I expect to potentially see something. So then I can look at this guy. And let's say as she's walking, he starts to like do this, boom, right there we correct. We don't wait for the attack to happen. We create the amp up. Okay, so I can catch him at 1 to 2. Mm-hmm. So then what happens is he starts to think, when I escalate into this mindset, this happens, an aversive of something I don't like happens. And if you can catch it early enough, that's how the brain starts to learn to self-regulate. And we go into that would be considered avoidance or flight mode. So then, chances are if I correct him, he might go, crap, I didn't like that, I'm gonna leave this situation, right? And I keep repeating that early on in that process, is eventually he starts to tie together, oh, whenever I go into a possessive state, this happens. But if I leave the situation, nothing happens. Does that make sense? So that's how we start to create default behaviors, and that's how the brain can learn to self-regulate, because it's so conditioned early on in that amping up process, is that when he thinks about it, he's going to go, whoop, I'm going to go this way. Okay, instead of going, I'm going to start a fight, I'm going to go this way, right? So in most cases, we would expect he would deflect and move away. But like, let's say he's too into the bone, it's a new bone, a raw bone or something, and he doesn't even notice Olga coming in. And then by the time he notices she's already here, chances are he's going to kick into old habit because it's already there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's where like being aware as an owner, where I'm like, okay, right, I'm like reading or whatever, and that maybe I too don't see it until it's too late, but I see it early enough that I can intercept and stop it from happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like it's a balance. It's like, yes, we teach them not to go into conflict and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, we're still aware. It's not like, oh, I fixed it, I don't have to worry anymore. So like I had a client way back when I first started whose dog was very fear aggressive, and they couldn't have anybody come over. They put the dog in the room, the dog would bark for hours, okay? She hated people touching her tail. And during the training, I really pushed that. And you know, in the beginning, she was like attacking my sleeve and all that stuff. I have a special sleeve that protects me, and I was correcting all that stuff. And then they told me about her tail. So I'm like, I have to press that. Because I'm thinking someday someone's gonna grab her tail. That's what people do. And it took like 2 to 3 classes, and it was like that. Like she was like getting worse because I was pressing the button, and eventually we got her over it. And it got so bad that one day the owner actually got pissed at me, started yelling at me, swearing at me. He was like, "You're fucking making my dog worse." I go, "No." I'm like, "I know someday someone's gonna do this to your dog, right? And trust me." So we resolve all that. Fast forward 6 months, a year or so, I run into him at a bar. And I'm at the bar, having a drink with my friends, whatever, and the guy comes up and he's like, "Jesse." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "Dude," he's like, "I'm so glad and thankful that you did that with my dog's tail, the training." And he's like, when they were at a festival in Pilsen, they brought their dog with them, and they were just hanging out in front of my friend's yard. So she couldn't go anywhere. So we got her in a good place, and they're at the festival, she's chill, people walking around and stuff. and somebody's kid ran up and grabbed her tail out of nowhere. And the dog's like tensed up, like, because she still didn't like it, but she knew or had learned not to escalate. Does that make sense? So I worked through it and I told them, don't do this on purpose. I did this as precaution's sake, right? But don't tell people to grab my dog's tail. But in case it happens, it's like that insurance. Like, we should do it. So that's how I look at it. Is we do a bunch of stuff to prevent it, to control it. But at the same time, I know at some point life can happen, and it may not work out the way we want it to.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're going to have tools to like stop or control or whatever. So that the behavior part is simple in that sense because we know it's around objects, and we can assume it's around, like if we're at the dog park and it's like a smaller group or just you and your other dog, that he may become defensive.
And it's also maybe me too. So like me petting another dog and he's like, no.
Right. So when it comes to that, again, we can't make him like that.
Yeah.
You can force him to accept it, but don't expect him to be sitting here while you're petting this dog.
And be ignoring and like, not even. Yeah.
Correct, okay. And every dog is different. Some dogs, they'll see you petting and they'll charge across the dog park to address that situation. I don't know where your dog falls in that, right? But like, let's say that was the case and you're petting a dog and Ozzy starts charging over, you would just correct him. In the process, I wouldn't wait for him to already be here, right? So then what can happen is he learns, oh crap, if I see mom petting a dog and try to come in to intervene, I get corrected.
And then the correction that you're giving, like what is that meaning to him? Does that mean like stop and like sit? Or like what does that mean to him?
That's too complex.
Yeah.
Because that's how most people think. They're like, oh, if your dog does this, put him in a sit.
Like I guess.
And what you want him to learn is, don't care about what I'm doing with another dog. Don't care that I'm petting a dog.
Okay.
I don't care what you do, right? You can continue playing with your friends, or you can lay down, but I'm gonna pet this dog. And I don't care what you do in response, but you cannot come after me or redirect towards another dog, which I don't think would ever happen, right? So like, let's say barking out the window. Very common problem for a lot of people. And they'll tell me, Jesse, my dog barks at the window. I call my dog comes back, but then they go back to bark at the window. Do we know what the problem is?
Put the blinds down. I don't even know.
Well, that would be a point. So,
just being territorial of his.
it's being territorial, right? But like, let's say you called the dog came back, but then went back to bark at the window.
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
I guess to train your dog to like stay with you until you
release them.
Yeah.
But then what happens when you release them?
Yeah, like continue to bark.
Right? Can you see why that would happen?
I guess you're not really giving them like any. There's no. I don't know. I guess the dog should be just like staring like nicely out the window. Are you even allowed to let your dog look out the window, or is that like not? Like, is that just like grabbing them up?
Sure.
So is that like a stick like a?
So this is the human brain. Okay, it's very simple. Dog's barking at the window. Ozzy, come. He comes.
Yeah.
He did what you wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. I'm gonna go back and bark at that window, right? How about Ozzy, don't bark out that window? Correction. Okay, to deter the behavior. So look at it this way. Ozzy, Olga coming in close, right? He's saying, Olga, don't walk past me when I'm chewing on the bone. Don't do that, right? Dog jumping, correction, don't do that. I don't care what you do, but don't jump on me, right? Barking out the window, don't do that. I don't care what you do, but don't bark out the window. You see that? So obedience has made things complex in the sense that people overthink things. So you said, call them and stay with me.
Yeah.
But then what happened? You let them go. Don't bark out the window. Because nothing said don't bark out the window. So obedience and behavior are different things. Look at obedience as education. Sit, stay, come, math, English, science. Think of behavior as morality. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't jump, don't bark, don't bite. Does that make sense? So if someone is a genius, doesn't make them a good person. And they can be a genius but be a bad person, and a very good person may not be the smartest person, right? But they're still a very good person. They don't correlate. Same thing here, okay? Obedience is meant for control. It's also meant for preventative control, so technically, yes, like you could tell Ozzy, go lay down in your bed, and while he's laying on the bed, he cannot bark at the window, right? Because you have him under control. But he's not always going to be under that command. At some point, he will be loose. And when he's loose, technically, he can bark out the window.
Yeah.
You know, so like for me growing up as a kid, my mom didn't care what I did. Like, you know, I could read, I could play my video games, all that stuff, but I couldn't play baseball in the house. That was the one thing I couldn't do, right? You're gonna play baseball, we'll take that outside. Okay, so she put a rule to certain things, right? Same thing for the dog. I don't care what your rules are, as long as they're within reason. It's just a matter of correcting what we don't want. But then, like, for instance, heel, because you don't want him to pull you as you walk him. That's something that's obedience, right? Because it's not as simple as don't pull. That takes, like, don't do this instead, right? But as soon as you release him from the heel, what could he technically do?
Whatever you wanted, bark and lunge and...
Yeah, and pull, right?
Yeah.
So we go back to him doing what he wants, but, you know, dogs aren't meant to be walked on a leash. He's not meant to have a collar, he's not meant to have a harness, he's not meant to have any of this stuff.
Yeah.
He's meant to be naked,
Yeah.
right? So obedience is something that humans have created to give us control, which is good. But when it comes to behavior, it's a different realm. Okay, so like when your friend had referred you, like, oh, go, you know, find a behaviorist or whatever, because they're probably capped at obedience. Okay, that's their niche. So for me, my niche is puppy, off-leash obedience, you know, behavior work and all that. I know how to do protection work, but I just don't do protection work, right? So that's my entire niche. So when it comes to this stuff, this is almost with everybody. Everybody comes thinking they need one thing, but it's really like another thing.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's what I figured. I'm writing out all the things that are wrong, and I'm like, I have no idea. And hopefully we'll put it together.
Yes. No, I've done this for 10 years, and very early on, thankfully, I started to realize, because I would get someone to say, Jesse, my dog bites people who walk into my house. They need to learn how to sit. And I was like, how does sit stop the dog biting your guest? And they're like, oh, because if the dog is sitting, you can't bite my guest. And I'm like, what happens when you're not sitting?
Yeah.
And like, they're gonna bite my guest. I'm like, exactly. Behavior obedience. Okay, so it's both. They overlap a little bit. So like if I have a dog that lunges on the leash and like barks at dogs, first thing we teach is heel. Okay? Because a lot of times, so this harness setup here is part of your problem.
100%. But I'm also like, I feel like I'm teaching leash pressure wrong, collar pressure, and so I'm like, I don't know, like what? I don't know.
Sure, that's where I come in. It's okay. That's where I come in, right? But at least you're aware that the harness, of course, is working.
It like drives them up. It like builds up the adrenaline.
Correct.
So then I have treats with me always outside. I try.
But treats. So do you see the difference of what we have now?
100%. Yes.
And this is why I did this,
Yeah.
right? Because treats keep your dog stimulated.
Yeah.
Food is energy, right? Like the other day, I didn't eat all day till dinner, and I was drained. As soon as I had dinner, I was like, oh, good, I had energy, right?
Yeah.
So same thing for dogs. We're feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding.
I just caffeinated him. Caffeinated.
So it's like giving kids candy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to food. Food is great for things you want to see again. It's great as adding a reinforcer. It's great to balance out negative, absolutely. But as a soul training style,
Yeah.
it falls.
You don't always have food, you know what I mean? And like,
Yeah,
I'll
or
say
like
it's
let's say what's in the environment
much.
is just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? Or like you'd rather bark at that dog because it's more fun than what's in your hand.
Yes.
Right? That's where rules come into play. That's all I did with your dog right now, was give him rules. And I said nothing to him. I just used pressure. And I'll say, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And he's like, well, if I can't do that, can I be calm? I said, yes, you can. Because I'm not putting pressure on him. Does that make sense? So, questions so far about any of this stuff?
What's step one?
All right, so what determines like the time and cost and all that stuff is simply
Yeah.
how much do you want in terms of control. The behavior stuff is simpler than you think. Okay, because remember, it's just, don't do that.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was raised old school, I was spanked. If I talked back to my mom, if I didn't do my homework, if I didn't do my chores, spank, spank, spank. That was it. Okay, dogs are the same way. If Ozzy were to jump on a dog, mount a dog, or like bite a dog too hard, bite, bite, bite. Right? That's how they would correct him to say, don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so behavior is simple. When you have this kind of behavior stuff. Like if it was a dog that was fear aggressive with people, that's different. because I have to stop the aggression, but at the same time I have to work through the fear. And I have to get the dog to learn that there's nothing to be scared of. There's a little bit more issues to work through. This is pretty straightforward, okay? It's when Olga walks past you, don't flip out. Go the other way, okay? The obedience stuff is what takes time, because you're teaching a dog to do something. It's easy to teach what not to do, because it's simply aversive. It's more complicated to teach what to do, because he's not meant to sit and stay and down and come and all that stuff. It's not in his genetics.
Yeah.
But other dogs would tell him, don't jump on me. That's within their code, okay? So, you're like in the 6, 9, or 12-week range from what I'm hearing. Because you want to address the resource guarding, right, and the territorial behavior. You want to get a heel and recall, I'm assuming, correct? So those are the 2 essential commands. Heel and recall are the 2 most important commands. Heel simply because of pulling. Pulling creates frustration, which then leads to reactivity, which can then escalate to aggression, right? Recall, of course, is important because if he gets off leash or if he's running away from something, you need to be able to bring your dog back, okay? If you want more than that, then that's where the program goes longer, okay? So if your main concern is the behavior stuff, and then the heel and the recall, you're in the 6-week range. Okay. 6 classes, 1 day a week for an hour. 2 classes on heel, 2 classes on recall, and the other 2 classes I would use to teach you about the resource guarding, and that's going to take time. Okay, that takes time and repetition. The thing about resource guarding is when you start to add in consequence for things, dogs tend to lose interest. Right? So he's chewing on a bone and you start to put rules on it, you'll start to see he'll lose interest in the bone. Because it's like, well, crap, now it's not as fun as it used to be, right? Because now there's rules around it. So it takes time for you to build his understanding of release words or default release, which means when there's a dog too close or you're too close or whatever it is that he would guard against, he defaults into moving away from the object and he just surrenders it, okay? That takes time and repetition. But the last 2 classes we can use to teach how to correct behaviors and all that stuff, okay? It's simple, it just takes time to do. The 9 and 12-week program would allow us to teach more. Like there's stationary work, like go to your bed, don't move for 2 to 3 hours. There's sit down and stay, right? Down is also another stationary control command, which is lay down, don't move for the next 2 to 3 hours. Sit is momentary control. I wouldn't have a dog sit for 2 hours, like it's not comfortable for them. So down and place are the 2 long-term stationary control commands. And I almost always opt for the place command because it's the simplest to teach and the easiest for people to do without needing to teach much from the dog other than go to this object, okay? And then 12-week would be if you wanted full off-leash control over all 6 commands. Sit, stay down, come, place, heel, okay? Because all those commands are technically, you can build them to where you don't need a leash on your dog, and you can walk to the store and have them lay down at the restaurant you're eating, go to the dog park, go to an open park with no fence, not worry about your dog running away. All that stuff, you can build it to that degree. Whether or not you need it is obviously up to you.
Yeah.
So for the issues that I see here, pretty simple stuff. Because I'm assuming you do e-collar, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's so simple. It's because e-collar is easy to teach.
And that's fine for 6-month puppy.
That's where we start.
3 starts.
6 months.
Okay.
Yep. You can actually start as young as 2 months. It's just a little bit more nuanced, but most people aren't comfortable until the puppy is 6 months. Okay. So I just tell people 6 months because it's easy. But yes, he's right at the perfect age. And even if you went 3 months or a year or whatever, to me it wouldn't matter. I've trained dogs, younger than this guy in e-collar, and I've trained dogs as old as 8 to 12 years old on the e-collar. Why they waited that long, I don't know. Yeah. But you can teach a dog at any age. The whole can't teach a dog new tricks thing is not a thing. It's just a myth. Questions?
Any other tools that you use? Do you use a big clicker? I don't know, what are... Okay.
Just e-collar.
I find that so annoying. So,
yeah, no.
Okay.
Your leash, this collar here, and the e-collar. That's all you need. If you wanted to incorporate food, I don't have a problem with it, but I wouldn't teach you. Okay, what we would do is we would teach the skills first until you got comfortable, and then I would say if you want to incorporate food, you can add it in now.
Okay.
Because it's simple. If you say sit and he sits, food, right? Because people are used to using food to shape the behavior, right? So like right now I kept seeing you like kind of putting them in front of you and stuff like that. And I saw your hand like this, so I'm assuming you were rewarding a sit or a down or something, right? Trying to keep them stationary during that time. But when we do pressure, we shape the behavior with pressure, and then when the dog does it, then we feed. So we're not using the food as a lure, we're just using it as a reinforcer. Okay. So, but you don't need, almost all my dogs are not trained with food. They're all trained on e-collar alone. Okay, or if anything, and from collar, but that's really for my real big dogs. You know, like I have 2 clients that are Rottweilers, so they have e-collar and prong.
Okay.
So because they need physical control just in case, but the e-collar does the bulk of the work.
Okay. I was gonna ask, do you recommend getting like a slip collar, or that's like,
No.
you won't need that?
No, you got your flat collar, you got your leash there, that's all you need.
Okay.
Yeah. I would, once you start, get rid of this thing, you're not gonna need it unless you want them to pull sleds or something. Because that's what they're for.
Yeah.
They're meant to pull sleds, they're meant, to do those types of things.
Yeah.
They're very poor training tools. Even the front clip ones, because I know they say like no pull harness.
Yeah,
it's an
that just
oxymoron.
make them like walk weird, which then I'm like,
Yeah, because it diverts the pressure. Yeah.
So, what's the ask? And then like, what's your availability, like times that you?
That depends on your availability.
Okay.
Versus mine. So what would happen is Maria will follow up with you, and she'd give you, the breakdown, send you a contract form, and the model that we would recommend. Okay. And let's say you're only available like on Friday night, and my Friday night's booked. Well then, obviously,
Yeah.
I may have more availability, but I'm not just available Friday night, right?
But you'll do like weekends and
Yeah.
weeknights?
Yeah.
If whatever, okay.
Yeah.
My schedule, like, I think it's always different from one week to next, which is obnoxious, just till May, but.
Yeah, if you have a rotating schedule, what we do is you just tell Maria, like, hey, my schedule changes, and we ask that you just give us what you have, right? And we'll book the first few, so we may be on different days.
Okay.
There's some times where I may not see you for a week or two, because our schedules just don't line up.
Yeah.
It's nothing bad, it's not gonna work against your training, and if anything, it's good, because it gives you more time to practice.
Yeah.
And more time to come make mistakes and screw up, so that when you come back, they're like, hey, Jesse, this is where I'm still struggling, and I go, okay, and then we can build off of that. So if you have a rotating schedule, not a problem. If you have like 2 days that you know are always off, you would just let Maria know, and if we have an opening, she'll put you in, or she'll like reserve a spot for you, and then we'll start and like maybe be kind of back and forth the first couple of classes. But then once that day opens up, she'll say, okay, now your spot is open.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, but she'll handle all that stuff because my schedule changes all the time.
Okay. And is there a different collar I should get because of like his age or size, or do you get the same? I have like the dog to something, I don't even know what it is.
You can send us what you have.
Okay. That way I can control it on like one remote.
How many settings is there? 100 or 127?
Oh, I don't know. But I'm not sure.
Okay, if it has 100 to 127 settings, like if you look at the back of your remote, or even on the collar, it should say like Doctor 300, Doctor 280, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you would just email Maria and say like, I looked at my collar, this is what I have. Okay, so because he's, how much does he weigh?
Just about 40.
40? So, I mean, he's a little shorty, but doesn't mean he can't grow a little more. He kind of looks like he looks a little long too. Like, I feel like he's like pit dachshund something.
I gotta do one of those DNA tests still.
So a couple things would be, I know he's a smaller guy, but pits are notoriously tough. Okay, so if you have a collar meant for 35 pounds and under, technically like he's just over by a few pounds, but you want to factor in physical resiliency. I've had dogs be super tough on the collar and not be big dogs. Like their level's 80 out of 127. Okay. So with pits, if you wanted to start with what you have, and I tell you like, hey, this is meant for a smaller dog, and I suggest you get this one, you can start on it. But if we start to have issues, you're wasting classes essentially.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the only thing I would say. Because the other thing is, what if he does grow
Yeah.
a bit more?
Is it usually 35 pounds? Is that the?
A lot of collars are 35 pounds and under,
Okay.
and there's some that are 70 and under, 70 and above.
Okay.
So the one I put him on is the Doctor 2300, if anything.
Okay.
Okay. which is for 70 pounds and under. You could also get the new black edition, which is meant for 70 pounds and over, which may feel like overkill. But it's a smaller box, so it's not the big box, it's a rounded box. It's only like, I think, $50 more, and it's like the best collar they have now.
Okay.
So it's like you get that collar, you can train any dog with it. It just means the output is higher, which means the number will be lower. The other reason why I say go opt for more power is, let's say we have a situation where it did escalate into aggression, right? Maybe the dog tackles him too hard, and then all of a sudden we got a scuffle. I'm not worried about can I override the dog or not, because it's kind of like getting in a fight. Have you ever been in a fight? No. Okay. Well, I have, and you don't feel it. That's so very violent underneath the mask. You don't feel it because the adrenaline's pumping, right? You get punched, nothing, and then afterwards, like, oh crap, my jaw's or whatever. Same thing for dogs. In the scuffle, or in reactivity, adrenaline goes up, so they don't feel the physical. And I've had dogs be maxed out on the collar and below where I passed it. Okay, most of them, bully type breeds, pit bulls, bull terriers, Rotties, big powerful dogs will blow past the power. Okay, so by opting for more, it's kind of like, if it happens and I need it, I have it, and I don't have to worry about it. Is where I come from. Okay, because I've had it happen with clients where they're like, we try to override the dog, but just blew right past it. Mm-hmm. So I've learned to just, or at least for the bully types, even though he's an interesting looking fella, I'm just accounting for the toughness of the pity, and then maybe needing it. So it's kind of like you have it and not need it, then need it, not have it. Okay? Fully waterproof system, 3/4 to 1 mile range, depending on the system that you get. The 2300, what's nice about it is that it is expandable to a 2-dog system. So if you turned around and said, hey, I have a 2300, and you wanted just to opt for that one, I'll go, okay. And if you wanted to get a second collar, all you do is just buy a collar, and you should be able to expand it to a 2-dog system. Okay. Otherwise, the black edition is just a solo 1-dog system. Okay. Other questions?
What else? Pricing for the 6-week course?
6-week, I just saw the other day, is $950 for 6 classes.
Okay.
Okay. And then part of your consultation fee gets credited towards that.
Okay.
And then we have my space here. It's 13,000 square foot facility, plenty of space to do recall and all that stuff. Most of my clientele is working here. I have a couple of people that still want to work outside. So I do work with people outside. We switched from Oz Park to Palmer Square now because the breeze off the lakefront is brutal. So Oz Park is colder. So working over here at Palmer Square is easier because we don't have to deal with lakefront breeze. Okay. During the summer, working at Oz Park was awesome because I don't know if you're aware, but Oz Park is like super busy in the summertime.
A lot of distraction.
So we were training, real time in a very realistic environment for people. So it's great. But now with it being cold, like no one really goes there anymore. So it's kind of pointless.
And you just recommend like dogs to wear the e-collar at all times?
When you need it. Okay. So for instance, let's say in the beginning when you're working on, resource guarding, blah, 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 or he's going to be wearing it a lot more. How he advances kind of dictates what you do. If your comfort level is like, you know what, I don't trust the little guy, I'd rather just have my collar on him anytime I give him something that he's going to have for a period of time, you just collar him up and give him the object. Okay. And the collar's just there just in case. And then when he's done with the object, you take it off and he's good to go. If you go outside on a walk, or if you go into the park and you be playing with dogs, blah, 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 since he's going to be off leash or whatever, or we're going to be outside, so there's a lot more stimuli that we can account for, you want to have a collar on. Okay, it's probably one of the most common questions that I get is when does the e-collar go away? And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah. Reason being, so like humans, you would drive your car turned on, right? You go on the expressway. Yeah. Do you go the speed limit?
Yes. Sometimes I speed,
Huh?
Sometimes I speed.
Sometimes you speed. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's most people. Most people do not go the speed limit because there's no further consequence, right? But if you see a squad car, what happens?
Yeah, you slow down.
Slow down. You don't want a ticket. Same thing for dogs. Okay. So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, he's going to know, okay, I need to be more, I got to behave myself, blah, 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 blah. But also, just in case of an emergency, you have it. I've had people's dogs take off because of fireworks. You know, so like, let's say their dog's at Alice Park and some kid lights up fireworks and
I'm
then
thinking about fireworks in July.
Yes.
I'm like, I just want to get this under control before July.
yeah. So I can't again make him like fireworks, but at least if something happened and he happened to get off leash, we have the ability to make him return. Okay, so that's kind of like the what if scenario.
Yeah.
So the way I teach is very fluid. I teach, yes, we're teaching the dog skills, but I'm teaching you how to adapt to situations. Because I train for real life. I train for the shit that people don't think about, and they're kind of like oblivious to.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this stuff actually happens.
Because I like don't want to get sued. You know what I mean? Like if he bites some other dog, and like I'm just like,
Sure.
you know,
And, like,
I'm just thinking about these terrible situations that transpire.
Right. And when it comes to like, okay, like, can anyone guarantee your dog will never bite anybody or a dog?
Never.
Right. If your dog has a mouth, they can bite, is what I always say. However, you would be educated where it's like, okay, if you want to avoid a situation, just be a step ahead. Most people go like, what's going to happen? Right? And then when shit blows up, it's like, oh crap, and they jump in. I assume something's going to happen because dogs are primal.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if I'm at the dog park that I've never been before, and my dog goes to drink water where another dog is drinking water, I don't let my dog go. I assume that dog's going to guard the water.
Mm-hmm.
So I prevent anything happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'd rather not know, right? So same for this guy. Let's say you're at the park and he's drinking water, and you're like, I've never seen a dog approach the boat when he's drinking water. And then you're like, I'm just going to call the dog back and avoid that situation, right? My pit, I've had her for 9 years since she was 3 months. She's guarded water in her life like 2 to 3 times, okay? And each one of those times, very hot day, had just come back from a very long walk. But any other time, she could care less about water, right? But someone may not see that little variable of like, oh, on a really hot day, I can anticipate my dog's gonna guard water, right? Sometimes people just see it and they just assume, oh my God, my dog guards water now, and they just like freak out. They don't let their dog near water with other dogs. They don't know, you gotta look at the bigger picture, what else was different, right? Now, if the dog guards water all the time, then that's a resource guarder over water, because it's consistent. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, and like, let's say he has a bone, again, people, like let's say you can take bones from him, no problem. Andy can take bones from him, no problem. Doesn't mean I could. Don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
But people have this thing in their head of like, I'm the human, I should be able to do whatever I want because you're just a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get bit. And then they're like, oh my God, your dog's aggressive. Like, no, like, you're just a dumbass. And you grab the bone from a dog you didn't know. That's how it works. So, I wouldn't worry so much about that stuff. Definitely have a dog who's inclined to guard resources. Okay, we know that.
Mm-hmm.
But we can work on that. E-collar makes that easy. You just have to be aware. So whenever you're at the dog park, instead of being the person who just drinks her coffee and is on their cell phone, you're just watching your dog and
Yeah.
watching the situation. And if you see like, I don't like where this may go, call your dog back or correct him so that he moves away from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're just being proactive about it. Okay? Anything else?
I'll probably think of a million questions as soon as they work out, but we got time, right? 6 weeks, so.
Yeah. And let me think here. The way it would progress is the first 2 classes are almost always on heel. And then if you wanted to touch on the resource guarding first, we could do a class on the resource guarding and the behavior stuff. And then you just start that process. And then the 4th class will most likely be the recall. So then 4 and 5 would be recall, and then class 6, if you want to do a review on the resource guarding, if you're like, Jesse, that's going really well, we're just going to keep working on it. Heel's good, recall. Recall takes the longest to teach, by the way, because it requires you to go somewhere. Heel's the fastest because you walk your dog multiple times a day, okay? So that's normal. Then we can teach stationary control, which is like, go to your bed and don't move for the next 2 hours or whatever, and then you're good to go. Unless you want to get more advanced, the only command that has to be off-leash reliable is recall. Because when you're going to need to work, it's because he's not on the leash. So other than that, the heel and all that stuff shouldn't be an issue. That's pretty much it. Okay? Anything else?
I don't think so. It's just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to like get started now. So I'm like, what can I do like right now?
Oh, sure.
Or like this week when we're like walking outside, you go to the bathroom, like
With what, like?
Maybe like we're getting into like the training and it's like too much to explain, but just like in terms of like heel, like what should I be doing like right now? Nothing?
Nothing you do here without the collar would help you.
Yeah.
So like when people reward dogs at their side like this, I hate it. It does nothing.
Because I'm like, that's what I do with my other dog and she still can't heel, so whatever is all whatever for that. But I'm like, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. And I mean, just so you know, like I don't care. But if you wanted to train your other dog, it's just like a $35 fee for an extra half an hour. And what we do is 45 minutes and 45 minutes. So if you have a 2-dog system, or if your other collar is appropriate to your dog, whatever, we could work with one then the other.
Okay.
And then and you can easily do the first 2 classes with her because dogs respond to the e-collar differently. So he could be super receptive and she could be super resistant, or vice versa. Right? So if she ends up being super easy and we focus just on her and then you try to apply it to him and he's super resistant, well now you're stuck because we didn't deal with a resistant dog, right? So it's nice to split them. Once you teach them both how to heel, like you could add on a half an hour to every class, or you could add on a half an hour for the first 2 classes and just teach the heel, right? And then the rest you focus on him. And then you just take what you learned with him and apply it to your other dog. Like I don't care. But if you wanted to bring your other dog, there's just a small fee for the extra half an hour.
So you said 45 and 35, whatever, for extra half hour?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Extra half an hour,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Because I'm already here, right? So it's like, if you're just bringing another dog, that's the only thing we recommend. Otherwise, it's, if we try to do 2 in an hour, and he takes up more time than we thought, or she takes up more time than we thought, then we're only lift a little bit for the other dog. And I try to balance, do half and half.
Yeah.
45 is like a nice number for each dog to be working with. Okay? Anything else?
I don't think so. So no, I'll just find a collar, or I'll email Maria.
Yeah, we'll send you the make and models that we recommend. The 2300, of course, is expandable. And how big is your other dog?
She's 65 pounds.
60 pounds, and she's a pit mix too?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So technically the 2300, because that's 70 pounds and under, would technically be the collar for both of them. Okay, and she doesn't have any reactivity or anything like that? No,
she does, yeah, she does fine on the e-collar. Like, and initially I was like, oh fuck, I'm training, or sorry, like I'm training her wrong. And then I switched up to some different videos. I think it was Leerberg or something.
Oh, not Leerberg.
I don't know. And then I was like, now she's getting it and not like being all like scared and timid about it.
Sure.
Personally, I thought I ruined my dog. I'm like, oh my god.
Sure.
But now she's great. I think the hard press it, never.
Okay.
She's good.
Yeah, so I know Leerberg. They have good trainers, but the guy, Ed Frawley, he's the old school thought process, right? And there's like, I watched this stuff, and there's like 5% of it that I would say that's good stuff. The rest of it is just like there's his dominant dog video. He's like, I keep the dog in a kennel all day, they're gonna learn I control his life, and I let him up. I'm like, dogs don't think that way.
Yeah.
Like, you can keep a kennel all you want, the dog's not gonna think, okay, we'll submit to you, sir, because you keep me in a kennel all day. Like, dogs don't think that way. Another dog would simply just beat the crap out of that dog. And that's how they dominate each other. Not saying beat the crap out of your dog, but they use physicality.
Yeah.
So, but all that stuff was just like control everything, and like it has absolutely nothing to do with dominance. So
What's your view of the e-collar? Like, what is that to
It's
you?
the best
That's
thing
like,
to do.
but like, how do you categorize that? Is that like a negative reinforcer?
it's positive punishment.
Positive punishment.
Correct, because you're adding something the dog does not like. Okay, so there's positive punishment, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, negative reinforcement, right? In this case, positive and negative mean add and subtract, not good and bad. So positive punisher, add something bad. Positive reinforcement, add something good, right? So like here, I'm putting pressure. This is positive punishment. And then when he does it, that's negative reinforcement. Because I added pressure, that's discomfort. He gave me what I wanted, and then I removed pressure. Okay, so I took something bad away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I was communicating with him. Okay, so e-collar is that. It's a positive punisher. You're adding an aversive, or adding something uncomfortable, and then once the dog complies, you remove it. So then that's a negative reinforcement. Okay? So, but that's honestly the best way the dogs learn. Because that's what they do, they bite each other. That's a punisher, right? The problem is people have been misled and duped because it makes you feel good to think you can train your dog to be a good dog using only positive reinforcement. enforcement.
Yeah, it's like using that for kids, it's impossible too,
No.
so.
I was raised old school, like I was spanked, right, but I was also rewarded for
Yeah.
good behavior. Dogs are the same way, right, but dogs don't, have you ever seen a dog give another dog treats?
No.
No, right, because they just whoop each other,
Yeah.
and they establish a hierarchy, and then they're good to go, right? So, e-collar is the best tool. It's how you use it. You know, we don't come in blazing on the 100 or whatever. Like, there's a system to it, which you know you may have watched your DVD of finding your dog's working level and all that stuff. But the way I teach is I want your obedience to be effective immediately. So like if I took this guy and I worked with him like 50 minutes in here, by then 50 minutes I'd be walking through and you'd live with your dog on my side. Okay, it doesn't take months or weeks or whatever to teach this. It's literally just minutes. It's just a matter of does the dog respect the command? And that just comes down to the number. So if people get stuck on a number or they're like, oh, my dog was great at 10, and they try to make 10 always work. But then they're in a setting and 10's not working. But they're stuck. They don't want to go higher than 10 because they remember the dog will be perfect another day. But I'm like, no, today you need 25. So now we just go 25. Now your dog is perfect again because we're in a different environment. So it's really logical and like intuitive once you get the concept of it. And then, you know, you expose them, you practice all over the place, and then that's what makes it more reliable. Okay?
All right.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you got a normal pup. Yeah, I think you're
It's
fine.
like, oh my God, what are we kidding ourselves?
If something pops up, you can let me know, and then I'll let you know if it's a concern. And if for whatever reason something did come up and we have to take a tangent, I have no problem. You've already paid for my time. But like, let's say something did come up, or like Jesse, there was a dog fight, now he's like super reactive and stuff, and we take a couple of classes to work on that, we may not cover everything
Sure.
within the time frame. But with what I see here, this is pretty typical stuff. Okay?
Yeah.
Put that one there. I had to do it too because I have a camo leash here, he had a camo vest on.